Today's topic is Waterfalls by TLC, a 1994 smash hit that's full of the smooth, dreamy chords that we all associate with 90s R&B. I'm going to talk about the chord progression, what makes it so special, and show you the chord voicings that will really evoke the vibe of the original record. Let's get started. Waterfalls was recorded in the key of E-flat major. It's set to one chord progression for the whole song. 1 major 9, 5 added 9, flat 7 major 9, and 4 with an added 9th. Always over 4 bars, with a couple of minor exceptions that we'll talk about later. For starters, the continuous use of chords with ninths in them gives the whole sequence a very colorful, lush sound, while also giving it something similar to the quality of the parallel chords we hear in later 90s jungle music, without being quite so rigid. Major ninth chords don't really want to go anywhere specific, they just want to hang around and sound pretty until it's time to go to the next chord. So something like with no ninths. Versus with the ninths and sevenths. And like I said, that's a little bit different than if we're doing what we would hear in later jungle music, which is everything's a major 7th or 9th chord without any kind of deviation in the voicing from chord to chord. So it's not that's a different sound, very cool on its own, but not very R&B. This is also an example of a descending sequence that's arranged in what we might call mirrored pairs. So we have E flat and B flat, the 1 and 5 of the key, or if we just simplify those down. But then instead of resolving back to 1, we go to a borrowed major flat 7, D flat. So, followed by its relative 5, A flat, which is also the 4 chord of our key. So, starting, down, up, down. On one hand, this gives our stable major 9 chords some direction because we quickly expect to hear the chords move by 5th once we have the pattern established. So once we have this do, 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 we expect to keep hearing that repeat. On the other hand, this cycle never really feels settled or fully concluded because it doesn't have any dominant 7th chords or resolutions. So we don't have like or anything like that. The 5 chord here really is functioning as a transitional chord between the 1 and flat 7. So this bridge. Rather than the punctuation mark at the end of a progression that we're used to hearing. Again, kind of we've had like 1, 5, resolution, or even a 2, 5, 1. We don't have that here. Instead, we have this cycle that ends on the 4, which is a nice place to come to rest. But it never feels like, okay, we're done, 'cause as soon as we go to that 1 chord, it just feels like we're starting over again. Let's take a look at how these voicings are built. For the major 9 chords, we're going to start by taking an octave root in the left hand. In the right hand, we're going to build a thick, close voicing by stacking up the 5th, the 7th, the root, the ninth, and the third all on top of each other, right in the area around middle C where we have the richest harmonics. If that 5 notes in one hand is a bit too much for your fingers, you can drop the root from the right hand, because it's already well represented in the left. This isn't a voicing that fits every song, especially if it calls for a lighter texture or more space around the middle harmonic range. So it's, if we need something light and airy, we might do something more like something like that. But for a song like Waterfalls with lush keyboard pads that are balancing out the kind of lighter, funkier textures in the guitar and drums, these voicings are just right. Now we'll do the same for the D flat major 9 chord. Just go root, 5th, 7th, root, 9th, 3rd. And if we just use these two major 9 voicings back to back, we could have a minimal lo-fi or ambient track, or the basis for one at least. So one variation on this voicing is that we can play the chord with the 3rd on the bottom in what would otherwise be root position, and not bring the bass note in right away so that it sounds like a minor 7th chord before the bass comes in to complete the picture. This works particularly well in the pre-chorus, so the added 9th chords are pretty straightforward here. We're going to take the root and the 5th in the left hand, and then we're just going to stack up the root, 9th, 3rd, and 5th in the right hand. This creates a smooth sound because our right thumb gets to stay in place. So from here to here, while the other voices move down or merge accordingly. This also applies to closing the left-hand notes into a 5th from the octave of our previous chord. We use the same process for the A flat added 9. Root, 5th, root, 9th, 3rd, 5th. I did say that there were a couple of exceptions, so let's talk about those now. The first one happens on every 8th bar or the last bar of every second loop. We keep the same chord, A flat added 9 in our right hand, but the bass note changes to E flat. So this makes the chord sound a bit less stable and produces some contrary motion coming up from the D flat against the descending voices in the right hand. So down here, this goes up, right hand goes down. The E flat in the bass also builds anticipation for the return of the E flat major 9 chord in the next bar. So we go from this which sounds different than us going now for the second exception. Remember how I said there are only 4 chords and no dominant 7th chords? Depending on what we play, that's technically not true, because there's a passing C7 suspended 4 chord that naturally occurs at the end of bar 2 if the bass plays a passing C while going from the B flat add 9 to the D flat major 9. So we have this. So if we go, we get that. Now we could argue if this is really a fifth chord since it shares 3 of its notes with the B flat add 9 that we just came from, and the bass could just be a passing tone. But it's good to note it either way, especially because it adds some welcome dissonance to the otherwise dreamy chord progression. This kind of thing is good to throw in every so often to keep the listener on their toes, but not so often that it becomes predictable. So just at the beginning we could do, then the next time around we go, no chord there. In conclusion, Waterfalls is a great lesson on how to build a chord progression from major 9 and added 9th chords, how to build lush, thick chord voicings in the middle register of the keyboard, and how to create variety with alternate bass notes and passing chords. That was our lesson on Waterfalls. I hope y'all enjoyed the return to 90s R&B. If you want to support what I do, please like, subscribe, and comment, and go check out my Patreon in the description below. If you want to learn more about a more random selection of music, check out my second channel, How Pop Music Works Live. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of someone else, and have a good day.